The lush summer grass gave way to her. Her dress was covered in blood. Her eyes blazed with fear. For a heartbeat, the Kansas wind appeared to halt as well. She raced as if someone had reached out to pull her back from the grassland. Her white gown was ripped. Her hair adhered to her face. She continued to glance over her shoulder as if someone were breathing down her neck. Lily Hart, 24, was her name. Tougher than she appeared, she was little and swift, but not strong enough to outrun a man like Clayton Reed. Clayton was born with a silver spoon, according to the majority of males in Dodge City. Some claimed that the spoon was pilfered. Either way, he was the kind of rich cattle baron who believed anything Lily was already his. And he had at last pushed on this day. Her far enough to force her to flee. The sun pound down on her as fiercely as possible. The prairie was so silent that she could hear her own heartbeat. Then followed the noise that almost lowered her to her knees. A crack from a rifle. Behind her. Sharp, average, near. She fell to the ground after the bullet brushed her hip. She delivered a powerful blow. Dust blew up. Despite the fact that her breath was being torn from her chest, she continued to crawl while pushing up on trembling arms. She refrained from crying. She refrained from screaming. Her entire body begged her to stop, but her will refused. She could see smoke rising from a forge, a shed, a cabin, and a line of fence posts up ahead. Someone might be able to assist her, or at the very least, frighten Clayton away long enough for her to regain her independence. She was prepared to risk her life on a stranger at that moment, even if she was unsure if anyone in Kansas had the courage to confront him. She dragged herself through the dust until her hands came into contact with hay that had been strewn all across a pasture. Her vision became fuzzy. The world whirled. Then she caught sight of him. Sawyer Briggs was a 50-year-old rancher who worked iron for half the county. He had broad shoulders, a gray beard, and sunburnt skin. He still had a hammer in his hand as he sat next to a bale of hay, a man who appeared to have been sculpted from the land. As soon as he saw her fall, he got up. He moved across the garden with calm, leisurely steps, the kind that come from a man who has no fear. She made an effort to stand up. She made an effort to alert him to Clayton's approach. She was only able to whisper, "Please help me." Beside her, Sawyer knelt. When he noticed the blood seeping through the fabric close to her hip, his gaze sharpened. Lily moaned in agony as he pushed a hand close to the incision, but she did not retreat. Not now. When she was on the verge of death. Didn't know if this man was a saint or a fool, but only because he was the first. Positioned herself between Clayton and her. He was. Gazed at the dusty horizon. Emerged from Clayton's riders. Gazed back at her, his expression opaque. And this is the query that will determine things to arrive at. Can a man who wants to avoid any trouble, save for a woman who offers nothing at all? Sawyer lifted Lily as if she were weightless. Then a bag of feed and brought her into the shade next to the forge. She felt as though she was standing in front of the gates of hell due to the heat emanating from that furnace, yet for some reason, it made her shudder even more. He gently placed her on a bed of fresh hay and grabbed the whiskey bottle that was kept close to the anvil. She attempted to swat his hand away, but the effort hardly moved the dust since she was too weak. Now it's simple. You bleed out if you don't drink this. Nothing in the world could rush him. His voice was steady and serene. Lily coughed violently after taking a sip. The searing was like a punch to her throat. She scowled at him while wiping her mouth. "I didn't come here to have a stranger patch me up." Her hands shook, yet she spoke as if she meant every word. Sawyer furrowed his brow. "You ran out of road, which is why you arrived here." Then he spotted the bullet embedded deep in swollen skin after pushing aside the ripped cloth close to her hip. He exhaled deeply. "This needs to be released immediately. You'll lose the entire leg if I wait." Lily sprang to her feet. Her eyes widened. Her voice broke as she asked, "What are you planning to do to me?" Not from fear of him, but fear of pain. Sawyer took a hunting knife out of the forge, its blade burning from the heat. "The bullet is close to the surface," he said after wiping it once with a fresh cloth. "In order to remove it, I must slightly open the skin." It will save your life, but it will hurt a lot. This is how people have been doing it since before Kansas even had a name. I then put an end to the bleeding before it killed you. One obstinate guy who dared to try was frequently the difference between life and death out here. Her breath caught as she gazed at the flaming knife. Every muscle in her body stiffened. Then, without warning, she uttered the line. You were placing that inside of me. Wait. Sawyer didn't even blink. It will soon come to an end. Stay put or things will quickly go sour. She made an effort to move away. The dirt was scraped by her boot. Her hands balled into fists. She had been struggling for days and running for hours. Her strength was vanished. But not her fire, not her pride. She gave him a direct look as if he dared to harm her. Do it then, but I will haunt you until the day you die if you kill me. Sawyer nearly grinned. Nearly. Then, as the wind carried the distant roar of hooves thundering across the prairie, he put the hot blade towards her wound that Lily's heart stopped cold when she heard something as soon as the metal contacted her flesh. Clayton was closer than anyone had anticipated. What happens, therefore, if the guy she fears the most arrives at the property before the bullet leaves her body? After the cut was made, Sawyer grabbed for a small iron rod that he kept near the coals. The tip of the rod glowed slightly in the light from the forge. Lily made a moan that was half gasp and half rage when the hot metal contacted her skin. Sawyer was a man who had done this kind of thing too many times to be afraid, so he applied pressure steadily without being brutal. When the heated metal came into contact with ripped skin, it hissed. Lily grasped his shirt in her fist and clung to it as if she were perched on a precipice. She exhaled sharply. The pain was cruel, white, and blind, but just as she was about to faint, she heard something outside. Low conversations, the clop of horses, the sluggish grind of wagon wheels. Sawyer tensed up before she did since Clayton's men were so close. That day, Lily realized for the first time that this stranger might be the one who suffered as a result of her jogging. Do not stop, she muttered, her jaws clenched. If he catches me like this, I am done. Sawyer didn't raise his head. Not yet. Sweat trickled down his brows as he held the instrument steady. He made a deeper push. Lily made a sound that could have broken wood, yet she remained motionless. She made herself do it. Her fingers penetrated his arm deeply enough to leave scars. There it is, Sawyer whispered. Bullet is turning. Hold on. As he steadied her, Sawyer's hand touched her waist. For an odd moment, Lily experienced a warmth unrelated to the fire in the forge. A man's voice called out from outside. Quite cold. Sawyer Briggs and Clayton Reed. You have something that I own. No one is harmed if she is brought out. Lily felt her heart pound hard against her chest. When Sawyer finally glanced up at her for a brief while, it seemed as though he was making a decision. He used one hand to hold her hip and the other to drive the tool in. The bullet clattered onto the ground after shooting loose. Lily let out a gasp as if she had been submerged for too long. Sawyer reached for a fresh cotton wad and applied it to her wound. He lowered his voice. I take it you can stand for a minute? You have to be standing or prepared to fight if Clayton enters that door. Lily forced herself to stand. Weak but unyielding, her legs trembled like a baby colt. Her mouth tasted of iron. She used the back of her hand to wipe away her tears. She wasn't finished yet. The footsteps outside became closer and heavier. Clayton yelled once more, louder this time. You have one chance to turn the girl over, Briggs. Can you hear me? Sawyer got up and picked up his hammer and gave a nod to the door. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he was too old to allow fear to dictate his decisions. Lily. Her pulse pounded as she forcefully gulped. They both knew what would happen next would determine everything. Some people have the option to their conflicts, but for Sawyer and Lily, this individual had forced the door open and made itself at home. Additionally, right before the doorway was covered with Clayton's shadow. I have a question for you. If you were, would you turn her over, Sawyer, or would you put your life in danger to protect her? To ensure you don't miss the next chapter of this narrative, feel free to subscribe if you want to know what happens next. While you're here, have a warm beverage, take a seat, and let me know what time it is and where you're listening. As if he owned the entire grassland, Clayton entered the doorway. His boots were covered in dust. Sweat trickled down his collar. Behind him, 2 men were armed with rifles. He looked around the room slowly, almost idly, until he saw Lily that stood next to Sawyer, the handkerchief saturated in blood pushed against her hip. "Well, look at that," he remarked, half smiling. "I ride all the way out here and find my bride hiding in another man's barn." Lily tensed up. Sawyer remained still. "Oh, and he simply shifted his weight like a charging bull." Clayton gestured to her. "Come here immediately. Can you hear me?" Lily gave a headshake. Even if her voice wavered, she persisted. "You do not own me. Not right now." "Never," Clayton chuckled. The hair on her arms stood up at the sound, which was deep and nasty. He flicked his hand in Sawyer's direction. "But this is easy, Briggs. You move aside. I accept the girl. We all return home after that. Not a problem." Sawyer moved forward with 1 boot. It was only 1, yet it was sufficient to alter the atmosphere in that space. "You shot her," he muttered. "You think I'm going to let you leave with her after you pursued her across half the prairie? Not taking place." Clayton's grin vanished. "It's a problem." Then the forge trembled when the first gunshot boomed so loudly. Too soon, Clayton's hired hand fired. Too untamed. Sawyer lunged, snatched the hefty iron ladle next to the anvil, and gave it a forceful swing. The man's grip on the gun was completely broken by the blow. The firearm clattered on the ground. Despite stumbling back against the hay, Lily managed to remain upright despite her racing heart. Clayton took hold of her arm. She screamed as he pulled so forcefully. With such force that the tools hanging nearby shook, Sawyer quickly pivoted, grabbed Clayton by the collar, and smashed him into the wooden beam. Clayton growled and spat blood. "You believe you can pilfer from me? Do you really believe you can take what is mine?" Sawyer bent over. "She is definitely not yours, and she is not an item." Raising his gun, the second hired man pointed it toward Sawyer's back. Lily was the first to notice it. Her breath caught. She was aware that the entire battle could result in death in just 1 more pulse. Perhaps hers, perhaps Sawyer's. So she did what was left of her. She reached for the closest object she could find. Just swing hard enough to ruin his aim, not to fight like a soldier. With a swift, frantic jerk, she lifted the iron despite her body trembling violently. This is the time that makes all the decisions. Will Sawyer be saved by Lily using the iron? Or will the story end here with Clayton's bullet? Lily didn't wait for dread to overcome her. She used all of her remaining strength to swing the iron. Like a church bell, the sound reverberated throughout the barn. Dust swirled around the rifleman as he fell to his knees, stunned, the gun falling from his grip. Clayton froze long enough for Sawyer to pull him free and push him back against the article. For the first time of the day, there seemed to be danger in that barn. Maybe tipping in their favor at last. The 2 men, both breathing, locked gaze. Difficult, the air heavy with smoke from the forge and the flame of rage. Clayton swung first, carelessly and wildly. However, Sawyer moved as if he had also survived. Many difficult years must be eliminated by 1 more bully. Clayton was knocked down with a single, powerful blow. The barn fell silent. Every breath felt louder in that little moment of silence, as if the day was still choosing who it would allow to leave. The only thing that cracked softly in the corner was the forge. With the iron tool trembling in her hands, Lily stood there. However, a fresh, unwavering fire had appeared in her eyes. She had fought back, not just survived. Sawyer shifted to her side and carefully removed the iron from her hands. He gave her a somewhat arrogant glance. "My life was saved by you." She could hear the truth in his quiet voice. Additionally, it was the first time since she fled Clayton. Lily's heart was steady. In the dirt, Clayton moaned. Despite their own lack of courage, his troops assisted him in standing. He gave Lily a gaze as if he intended to set her entire world on fire. However, Sawyer intervened. His voice was definitive, slow, and low. "She has had enough of you. Take off and don't return." Wiping blood from his mouth, Clayton forced himself upright. Rather than fear, anger flared in his eyes. "Briggs, this is not finished. I'm returning with all of my men." Sawyer moved forward just enough to silence him. Then you should also bring a preacher. Slowly retreating, Clayton was not defeated, he was merely preparing. And for some reason, the air felt colder as a result. Lily released a deep breath that she had been holding for several days. She lowered her shoulders, every one of them. She seemed to lose the will to fight it. Just once. Before she could fall, Sawyer grasped her. Not in a heroic manner. Not like a man claiming something. Only a person who refused to allow someone break in front of him. He placed her close to the forge and covered her shoulders with a blanket. Today you got up. Most people spend. They have been waiting for someone their entire lives. Otherwise to save them, but you managed to. Yourself. Remember that at all times. Lily glanced at the blazing fire and muttered, "It believed that I was running because I was weak." Sawyer gave a headshake. Running in the direction of freedom does not equate to weakness. It's the first step towards being your true self. And that's what most people overlook. Sometimes the world wants to determine your value before you get a chance. Sometimes the only way to discover your strength is when someone attempts to take it away from you. Lily finally felt the burden leave her chest as the sun began to sink over the Kansas farms. She had taken charge of her own narrative, not because she was safe. Lily noticed her while no longer hurt as the rest of the light faded behind the hills. The fact that she had no idea where to go next frightened her more. In her mind, freedom had sounded grand and glittering. It felt like a road without a map out here in the cooling dust. Sawyer strolled over to the fence and saddled his second horse, an ancient black gelding that he hardly ever rode. "Come on, night gets cold out here," he remarked, gazing at her with steady, composed eyes. "Let me ask you a question now. Have you ever had to defend your own freedom? When did you eventually decide that enough was enough?" Please feel free to subscribe and like the video if this story resonated with you so you don't miss the next one. Take a deep breath with me for a second before you leave. Additionally, while you're here, let me know in the comments what time it is for you and where you are listening from. I'd be interested in hearing your version of events.